Hello, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Martin Willmor from Digihaul, and our subject matter today is the digitalization of transport. Thank you for joining us today, Martin.
No worries, David. Good to meet you.
We really appreciate it. Can you give us an overview of your business sector and its position in the supply chain cycle, please?
Yep. So transport specifically, it does what it says on the tin, really. So anything that leaves the warehouse or a manufacturing plant to get on the shelves and get out into the supermarkets, the hospitals, basically everything that we consume as consumers comes through the transport end-to-end process. So that could be anything from ports right the way through to warehouses, but anything that ends up in our homes, in the main facilities, comes through transportation. So we specifically work in full truckload and part truckload movements, and that's our business model.
Okay, that's fantastic, and obviously we talk about the digitalization of transport. So I'd imagine it's a tech solution rather than a traditional solution, yeah.
Yep. So we're a digital freight business. Digital freight businesses were actually born out of the US, so they've been around for probably over 10, 15 years now. Fairly new concept for UK. But yeah, we are here to digitalize the end-to-end process, transportation process. So that's right the way from taking a booking for a shipment, a part load or a full load, and then managing that process with our plus 700 hauliers that we've got on our tech platform.
Oh, yeah, it's a big portfolio you've got there, and also hopefully it can be. We'll talk about being the green transition later, but obviously that can be, you can move full loads. That's going to save carrying fresh air, which a lot of the industries do. And it's obviously very expensive to carry fresh air. I really appreciate that. The question I ask everyone, what brought you into the lovely logistics world?
So probably like most people, actually, kind of fell into it. So I was traveling as a youngster, finished university, and I went backpacking for a period of time. Came back, didn't have any money, was looking for a job, and I'd previously worked at a couple of big third-party logistics companies as a picker in a warehouse. So I stumbled across an opportunity for a graduate program, and then landed a job which was XL Logistics at the time, which then morphed into DHL supply chain. So 20 odd years working with DHL, multiple different kind of roles, different countries, different business units. And then 3.5 years ago, I guess was quite frustrated with transportation and some of the ways of working that worked with our investment partners to form Digihaul to try and help solve some of those problems. And maybe, David, it might be good to just get into some of those challenges and some of those areas where I just think there is such a huge opportunity to improve.
Yeah, far away, because the next question is good. Like, tell about your business and specialism. So absolutely perfect. Far away. Yeah.
So I guess, if we look at specifically UK transport, we're fairly small island in the grand scheme of things in the overall space of the global transport, and typically warehouses, national distribution centres, regional distribution centres tend to be in the same place. So you have your big NDCs in the Midlands, and you have your regional distribution centres to cover off the far outreaching parts of the UK. Really, and I'm probably over exaggerating to make a point, but the UK transport hasn't really evolved since the 1990s. So people still operate with spreadsheets. They're still planning on very archaic planning systems. Most contract sites, customers, 3PLs don't tend to work together and collaborate. And the process of booking subcontraction specifically is very manual. So historically it's been, I'll phone my hauliers that I'm used to working with, I'll get a price, I'll then confirm that on an email, they'll go and execute the transport, and that end-to-end process is all paper driven. So, whether it's the initial phone call, the email, the confirmation, or the delivery itself, all of it's very manual and paper-based. And when you're a big organisation, like my old team in DHL, we had 110 sites in my business unit, probably 10, 11,000 movements a week. That's a lot of manual work and manual effort for people that could be doing something much more proactive. So that was a kind of, I guess, moment to reflect and think we should be doing things better. And when we looked at digital freight businesses overseas, actually, we could see that they were starting to digitalize some of these processes. And, that lit a passion in me and really excited me in terms of how we can improve UK transport and really do a much better job for our customers.
Fantastic, that's great. And obviously you mentioned in the UK, do you work in the UK or do you work any other countries or intend to?
Yeah, no. So we started in the UK at the end of 2020. So actually there was quite a bit of preparation needed to get things up and running because we started from scratch, really, from ground zero. So we started operating in 2021 in the UK. We launched in Mexico last year, in July last year. We're also now operating in mainland Europe for cross-border activity. And we've got another 10 countries that we're hoping to launch in between now and 2027. So, big plans to grow. It does, we have to temper that with making sure that we do that in a quality way and that we're serving our customers in the best possible way. But, big opportunities to improve some of those other operations in other countries as well, because from what I've learned over the last couple of years is the issues and the challenges we have in the UK are very similar in Mexico, Latin America, Asia Pacific. Everything is very manual end to end. And particularly after the planning's been done, transport planning, and into that execution stage, very, very manual and a lack of visibility. And in the UK, we're quite unique because a lot of customers and operations have their own trucks. But certainly in Latin America and Asia Pacific, it's all third-party subcontracted, 100%.
Okay, that's good. So, talking about the digitalization of transport. So if I was a consumer, how would I go, if I was working with Digihaul, how would I go? Would it be via a website, an app? How would I interact with yourselves and book it? And then what would be the process and what can I see online, really?
Yeah, so we tend to operate with business to business. So we will be working with the big brands that you as a consumer will be very familiar with. So we're working with big supermarkets, big FMCG organisations. We've just delivered the biggest peak actually in the UK, which included, chocolates, turkeys, Brussels sprouts, you name it. A very busy week actually this week for us. But yeah, we're working with those big brands, but how they operate with us is through our tech platform. So we have got two flows on the system. So we'll take an integrated order from their either warehouse management system or their order management system, or they can upload the orders direct into our web-based platform. So that's how we receive the orders. And then we allocate the work either on a contracted basis. So we have a fixed rate engine in the system, and then we'll work with our preferred hauliers or the customer's preferred hauliers for that contract specifically. If there isn't any preferred hauliers, then we can use our own solution as Digihaul and operate that on behalf of the customer. And then finally, we've got a marketplace where hauliers that have been regulated and compliance checked by our team here in the UK, they can then see that work on the marketplace and then make an offer, and then our team of experts would allocate that work. So that is all seamless through the platform, and that is all digitalized end to end. Once then the hauliers accepted the order, then they'll see that visible in their tech platform, the Digihaul carrier web, or on the mobile phone. And then the driver will then use the mobile app or the telematics in the cab to provide that end-to-end visibility, and that'll include a digital proof of delivery. With heavy goods vehicles, big articulated lorries, vehicles that are either delivering to a store or, a big industrial plant or a hospital, whatever it might be. We cover all sectors, but we'll be delivering direct into that warehouse store facility. So very similar to a courier shipment, but for heavy goods vehicles. And like I said, heavy goods vehicles and that process, the courier industry went through this disruption probably 15, 20, 25 years ago. We're just living through that now. So very similar.
Yeah, I imagine it'd be similar to me as a consumer booking an Uber vehicle, isn't it? Who's coming, when they come. You get, it's cashless. You know what the price is going to be. So it's probably not the same, but similar experience. Nice and smooth.
Very similar, yeah. And we operate a self-bill process. So once that shipment's been completed and confirmed, we've got a proof of delivery. Then the haulier will then pre-advise the costs that they're expecting. We do a three-way match on a system, and then the automated payment goes through. So the haulier gets paid a lot quicker than they would have done historically. And from a customer point of view, if they really wanted to, they could watch a map and watch their truck moving along the UK, much like you would with your Uber example. Typically, we find big supply chains don't want to look at each individual truck. It is still a no news is good news industry, but it enables our team of experts. We operate 24/7. We will actively watch those vehicles for the customer and then pre-advise them if there's an issue, because we're in the UK, you get traffic, you get weather, there are issues, but as long as we're in front of it and we're advising the customer ahead of the curve, then they're happy.
Wonderful, good. And that's a really good overview of what you do and how it works. Thanks for going through that. I really appreciate it, Martin. The next question is, if can you describe the current challenges in the marketplace for your business? The general marketplace, which also will sort of affect yourselves as well.
Yeah. So I think there's always challenges, and that's why we're here from a logistics point of view. We're problem solvers, and we're here to solve people's problems. And I often find if you're solving people's problems, generally you're doing the right thing and your business grows. I think some of the issues that we've had, like historically, are a legacy mindset. So people tend to want to operate the way they've always operated. So that could be either the customers or the hauliers. Sometimes they like that human contact. They like to phone someone and get that confirmation that it's on the way, rather than a digital process. So it's building that confidence in the digitalization of that. And then also, from a driver's point of view, sometimes their driver will like a physical signature on a piece of paper and, get that comfort that it's actually been confirmed. And then that paperwork often, takes weeks to get back, and then the whole payment process slows. So that legacy mindset is a challenge, and we're starting to win that battle and prove that actually by using the tech, it is better. And I compare, to other industries that have gone through this disruption. I can't remember the last time I went into a branch, if I'm honest. You can deposit checks, you can get a mortgage, you can do most things, bank transfers, all on your phone. So actually, that resistance is normal. It's human behavior to sort of behave and feel like that. But the more you educate, the more you communicate, and the more that people adapt, I'm sure in a year, 2, 3, 4 years time, everyone will be operating this way, and it'll be the modernization of transport. So that's one key issue. The other is, I think, we're really passionate about sustainability and reducing carbon emissions. I still think there's a disconnect between a boardroom making a commitment and the budget holder that's making these day-to-day decisions. So I think it's nice to talk about reducing carbon and doing the right thing, but ultimately it's still at the moment coming down to cost, and sometimes the cost gets in the way of doing the right thing. So that can be a key area. And then the final one is, I guess, procure behaviours, really. So specifically for the UK, most customers' operations have their own trucks that they operate, and there's a lack of willingness to collaborate across contracts or across organisations. So people like to have their own train set. They don't really want to share their train set, which then results in, I think it's plus 20% empty running in the UK, which I think is criminal. And it's our mission to make sure that we reduce that as a country, as an organisation.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Then, I imagine growth is this thing, but what are the biggest opportunities for yourselves in the next 3 to 5 years?
So I think for us, that digitalisation, hopefully people see that that's the way to go, and they start to adopt that more and those behaviours more. So I think from an opportunity for us is using the data that we consume and the data analytics to improve operations of our customers. So, everything you do when you have a digital transaction, you create a record, and you've got that record. So I mentioned just a minute ago, plus 20% empty running. We can show customers and overlay through our industrialized data platform opportunities for them to work and collaborate with another organization. So using our technology, but facilitating and enabling them to work better, more optimally. So that will cut down their cost because it reduces their empty running, but then they're doing the right thing for the environment. So to give you a quick example, we've been working for 6 months with a big FMCG organisation. They deliver to all the big supermarkets, all the big grocers. So historically, they would have subcontracted their work out independently and delivered it into that supermarket's warehouse or regional distribution centre. What we've enabled through data is them to actually backhaul through the supermarket's own fleet. So the supermarket will collect that from the warehouse, and then it's within their network. So 1, they've reduced empty running. 2, they've improved service because it's within their network much quicker. So, everyone's happy, and we've facilitated the transaction and digitalized their process. So it's a really obvious example, but you wouldn't believe the amount of disconnect there is within the industry.
No, I totally understand it, because obviously I've worked at it, and if you just think of every motorway, you go up a motorway, the M1, the M6, M40, you see how many, transport companies, pallet networks, parcel companies, all going up the same way. Hopefully they're all full, hopefully this time of year, but certainly in the middle of summer, they're probably not. And, so those things are really good.
And I drive my family nuts, David, as well, because whenever I'm driving around, particularly sort of holiday periods where we're going to Devon or Cornwall, I always look to see if the fifth wheel's up. So if the fifth wheel's up, for anyone that doesn't know, it means that the vehicle's not fully loaded. So you'd be amazed to see the amount of vehicles and businesses, organisations that have got that fifth wheel up, which means that it's either underloaded or it's empty. So keep your eyes out for that one.
No, that's a good tip, that is. And I've been in this industry 35 years, although I didn't know that. So thank you for that. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners who think they know it all don't. And I don't mean it disrespectfully. We all learn every day. That's the great thing about this wonderful industry.
Once you get into it, you can't unsee it either. That fifth wheel, that's it. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You keep your eyes out for it.
Definitely. What are the biggest threats do you see for your sector and the sector in the next 3 to 5 years?
If I think about the traditional mindset, that legacy mindset, and this is me not making threats, but I honestly feel that technology and big tech giants are will enter logistics, and we've already seen that. So you mentioned actually Uber earlier. What we see in Mexico in particular is Uber now investing heavily in HGVs. So Uber Freight are very prevalent now in Mexico. They're acquiring warehouses at the borders now between the US and Mexico. So these big tech giants are spreading much more into logistics and transport. We've seen that with Amazon as well, with their own vehicles and their own transportation opportunities. So I think that traditional legacy mindset is the biggest threat. If we don't adopt and embrace, and I'm thinking of, the more traditional businesses out there, I fear that the tech will override and disrupt these organizations. So that's why we're here, to improve that experience for our customers. But I do think that technology for the legacy traditional players is a real concern, and something that, we all need to adapt and evolve.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What are people in the sector not talking about that perhaps they should be?
Working together, really. So that point earlier about how can I utilize my vehicles for the benefit of another business and another organization. And I know sometimes, there's obviously competition, and, we're all in business to earn a profit. So I get that. And probably you wouldn't expect, a couple of supermarket chains to really sort of collaborate. But I do think there's a lot of complementary opportunities out there, that with the use of data and insights, we can have a much better conversation. So I think people talking about how do we collaborate, how do we work together for the greater good, really, both for their operations and their cost base, but also for the benefit of the planet. So I'm just talking simple things like, how do I adjust my collection windows or my delivery windows to facilitate working with another organisation? People tend to obsess about, I have to have a 6 a.m. collection or a 5 a.m. collection. Well, how about an overnight collection for an early morning delivery? Things like that, just practical measures. Or how does an automotive organisation work with a retailer? Or, how do we utilize our assets much better? Another observation is, if you're ever driving through an industrial estate, or you see the big operations on the M1, have a look to see how many vehicles are parked up, not trailers, but how many vehicles are parked up along the side of those facilities. And often, big organizations are sitting on huge amount of assets that are just not turning any wheels. So that's what I think we could do better. How do we collaborate? How do we work? How do we have the right discussions and use data to improve and optimize transport?
Thank you. And you've almost mentioned some of this, but, how do you see the green transition impacting the sector?
Yeah, so, I mean, that is really what we're here to do. And that's what we're most excited about. So we've got our own carbon calculator. So we basically will consume all of the data points that goes into making the delivery. So whether that's the collection, the delivery itself, or the return back to wherever that vehicle's going, we'll collect all those data points via GPS. So we have got geofences set up within the system. So when you're within a radius of your delivery point, that will trigger the geofence, which then feeds that information back to our carbon calculator. And then we'll take the weight of the vehicle, the emission type of the vehicle, the payload and the GPS, and then create that carbon emission calculation. So what big businesses tend to do at the moment is they'll make an assumption that X% of our vehicles have got stem mileage to and from a collection or delivery point. We can actually pinpoint that with actual data, actual GPS data. So one, that educates the customer much more in terms of what their actual carbon is, but then they can use the technology to make better choices and different decisions. So, our aspiration is for every shipment that we have in our system, we can actually provide an alternative, greener choice for that customer. So one of the challenges is the haulage industry, we're not that forward thinking when it comes to alternative fuels, and heavy vehicles, electric trucks have still got a bit to go in terms of technology, but providing that visibility, the transparency, and then when that tech and the different fuel types come in and become more prevalent, we're giving customers the opportunity to make a different decision. They might choose to not take that up, but at least we're giving them the opportunity to make a different decision.
That's wonderful. Thank you. What development in the sector over your career has surprised you the most?
Well, I think a recent one I would say is, e-commerce has probably been the biggest disruption in my time in logistics. So I remember setting up our first e-com operation in 2005. So showing my age a bit, but the technology that has enabled that direct customer delivery has evolved so much now that the big one that's really surprised me recently is you could order something off Facebook or off Temu or Shein, and you're getting it direct from China delivered to your door. So, my 14-year-old daughter is always on Shein and ordering all sorts of stuff. And you just try and process that and get your head around it when you've been in an industry of working in local distribution centres, warehouses, in that traditional mindset. And then pretty much with free shipping, no returns, you can get something delivered from China for like £3. It's just mind-blowing, really. Not great for the environment, though, I have to say. And I think over time, with maybe some taxation or government intervention, I think those streams will stop. But I find that mind-blowing, honestly.
The final question I'm asking everyone: if you could speak to the Prime Minister, then what would you ask them to do to assist your business grow and flourish?
Yeah, that's a really quite a straightforward answer, that one, because one of the things that I feel quite passionate about is for every product we consume, there should be some kind of carbon emission metric that people can see. A very simple, red light traffic signal, a bit like your calories or your number of salt that you have in your food. A simple measure that shows how efficient that's been from a carbon point of view, I think would be really useful, because it's all about education. That Shein example is quite a good one. That would probably be scarlet red on that packaging. But, my daughter or people that are ordering from Shein don't really know the impact that, whether it's air freighted from China, to meet service levels, the carbon within that shipment, people just don't know. And if they did know, they might make a different decision and might source it more locally. So that would be my request for Keir Starmer at this point in time. Get some education onto every product so people can make the right decisions.
Wonderful, thank you. I just want to say thank you again, Martin, for your excellent overview of the sector. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers will really enjoy it. Thank you so much for your time.